Okay, John, so you talked a lot about both and thinking. Can you elaborate more on what that all entails?
Yeah, I find it really interesting. We're used to either or thinking. It's either this way or it's that way, or being in court and saying you're either guilty or you're innocent, and then having a big fight about what that is. And that's the way we've done things a lot up until around 1980, when the beginning of the conflict resolution movement started. And there was a book called Getting to Yes by Bill Urey, which is a really fundamentally important book because it introduced the first time this term both and thinking. And what it means is that rather than trying to find the truth by saying, well, what's the strongest argument? And can we agree on this argument? And that's what you do with consensus, or when you're voting, it's like, well, what's the strongest argument? You say, well, let's say that everybody has a piece of the truth, a piece of the right way to go. Let's see if we can combine the ideas. And very often you then will come up with something that seems to be completely different. It's turn right or we'll turn left, or let's have the window open in the office that we're sharing, or no, let's have it closed. You can take things like that, or for guns and against guns, and you start saying, how do we meet the needs of everybody that's in the conversation? And very often it means shifting your point of view to really get what's going on. And so here's a really simple exercise that will illustrate this. If I tell you, and you do this with me, that put your finger in the air and put it up above your head, and look at your finger and make it go clockwise. Clockwise, slowly make it go no. Now I'm going to pretend to be angry. I said make it go clockwise, and you're not. So what am I doing? Okay, so slowly keep it going in the same direction as you're going. Slowly lower it until you're looking down on your finger. And if I think you didn't keep it going the same direction, but if you are looking down, you'll see it's going counterclockwise. So it's going clockwise up here, but when you lower it and look at it this way, it's going counterclockwise.
Wow.
So both and thinking says, oh, when you're going like this, you're going both clockwise and counterclockwise, depending upon how you're looking at it.
That makes a lot of sense.
So many things we deal with, if you look at it one way, it's this way. If you look at it another way, it's another way. Imagine that you're standing toe to toe with somebody, and there's a big number that's written in the sidewalk, and that looks like a 6, but the other person, that looks like a 9. Is it a 6 or a 9? Well, it's both a 6 and a 9. And should we have guns or not? Well, we can have guns and we can not have guns. Well, what's going on? Or maybe it's easier to think of the window. I want the window open in this office. No, I want it closed. Well, what's the underlying needs there? Well, I want to have fresh air. And the other person says, I don't want to get cold. So maybe you can both have the window open and closed, in a sense, by giving one person a space heater by their desk, and the other person sits near the window. So now the effects of the window being open are, it gives both fresh air, but you have hot air, also warm air. So you often have to look at the needs underlying what's going on. So if it's guns, like, I want to feel secure. Okay, I don't feel secure if you have a gun, but I feel secure if I have a gun. Well, how do we make everybody feel secure? And what are all the things we have to do that? Well, okay, if you have a gun, you need to have a lot of training. Okay, that helps. And so that was the kind of thing that we talked about. And so that asking, how do we bring in all these different viewpoints and make one truth out of it, is the essence of both and thinking. And it really is as fundamental as, we're so used to thinking, here's the statue with the scale, and whichever is heavier, that's the truth. Well, no, it's both sides of the scale are the truth. So it's a very fundamentally new way of thinking of things.
That's amazing. It reminds me a lot of illusion art. Depending on how you're looking at it, you could see a woman or you could see a lampshade.
Yes,
It just
right.
depends on your perspective.
What you're looking at. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so if you're running an organization with consent decision making, you most of the time are probably running it just like the old fashioned, okay, there's a leader and they delegate authority and they have final decision making power. But then you say, all right, we've got power coming down. How do we also have power going back up? Well, you can't do it, back up. It'd be like trying to have electricity run both ways on the same wire. You got to have a second wire. Well, then how do we do that? Well, we have feedback by consent decision making. So we completely break down the hierarchy and everybody's completely equal. And we talk about what's our policy and what's going on and make a decision together. And that informs the leader. So you literally have an organization that's completely flat, everybody's equal, and you have one that's hierarchical, and you flip back and forth between it. And that when you're bringing in consent decision making into an organization, you do it when it's completely flat. If it's day-to-day stuff, then you're top down and you have autocratic decision making. So that's the typical of the way that you can be thinking about new ways of organizing, new ways of making decisions, is by saying, well, we'll do it this way some of the time and that way the other part of the time. That's this both end thinking.
Yeah, that's amazing because, the perspective of somebody that is higher up, that is managing all these people, and the person that is under them are going to think and view the situations very differently.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that makes a lot of sense.
Yes. The classic example of where consent decision making was needed was with Kodak. You don't own a Kodak camera today. Maybe you did 30 years ago when it had film in it. The Kodak company, the executives would get in an elevator and go to the top floor of the building, and it was on the outside, so nobody else could get into the elevator. They didn't want to deal with the people down at the lower level. And then times were going by, and the people down the lower level made a few patents about how do you do digital cameras, not silver halide. But the people at the top were like, we've been here 100 years. We'll be here another 100 years doing this, silver halide film. And then the whole company just went out of business as the market, just said, phew. But they wouldn't listen to the people, although they could not withdraw their consent. They could see it happening, but they couldn't get through to the executives. So they needed to have part of the time where the organization was completely flat. So the executives had to listen to people who were saying, I don't consent to us only doing silver halide film anymore. And here's why. And bringing it to the executives that way. But they didn't do it. And so they failed. The whole company collapsed.
So hypothetically, do you think if they were to have listened from people on the lower end, that they would have been able to adapt and change with times?
Yeah, we've got lots of stories of companies that the people on the bottom are able to withdraw their consent or do something that has to be listened to. It doesn't mean that management doesn't have an objection. Management has an objection also, but everybody has to listen to the different viewpoints, and that makes a big difference.
I definitely agree. In business school, one of my management professors always said, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. You should be doing twice the amount of listening versus talking. And I think that is a great tool as if you're going to be a manager or a CEO, that you need to listen to your people.
I once had I was having this discussion with a senior officer of $1 billion company. We happened to be sitting next to each other on a little plane. And she said, I'm a very good participative manager. I can give people the feeling that they're giving me input, and then I make whatever decision I want. And that's not consent decision making. That's not mutual leadership. And she was laughing about it. She said, I'm interested in what you're saying. But she could see that the way she was having people participate with her was not not consent decision making.
Because she was still the one making the decision.
Yes. Yeah. A lot of managers think if they go around and get people's opinions, that they're really listening to the people, that they're doing consent decision making, but they're not. It's called participative decision making. And it's nice as long as they're hearing what they want to hear. There's another principle that's really helpful for consent decision making, and that's the concept of blind spots. And unfortunately, I don't have a drawing with me today, but if you have ever seen the thing where you have a line with a gap like this, if you look out of your eye over at one end or the other of that line, if you draw it on a piece of paper, and you put the blind spot that's in your eye over that gap on the line will look like it's continuous, because your eye, if it can't see something, your mind, if it can't see something, will fill it in. And there's literal blind spots because of the way our eyes are built. There's like over on the side of the eye, there's an area that you can't see anything, where the nerves go out of the eye. But I'm sure that you've many times, somebody has said something and you'd say, well, that's not so. And then you realize that you actually hadn't read the sentence completely and you had filled in the meaning with something else. And that happens all the time. Everybody has blind spots, and you don't know that you do when it happens because you're blind to the fact that you don't know that. And so making people aware of this blind spot phenomena and getting them to experience, not knowing something but thinking you do, is another thing it's really good to be aware of. So if you get everybody together and get all these opinions together, you start seeing things that you didn't see. And in the Kodak situation, that was precisely what was happening. These executives thought, hey, we're doing great. There's no danger. They didn't see what was coming. They didn't see that there was a whole technology coming that was going to just completely knock out the way they had been doing things. Managers like to have, when they're experienced with it, like to make decisions about policy and direction by consent, because it lets them see better. They can steer better. They can see better of what they were doing. And it's kind of like they're rewiring their power, not giving up power, but they're rewiring their power so that they can see better and they can guide better. And that's why you would want to be doing consent decision making.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, because no, it doesn't matter like who you are, like everyone has a blind spot.
Everyone has lots of blind spots. Yeah. You should see me trying to leave the house in the morning. It's like, oh, where's my shoes? Where's my wallet? Okay. I can't see where they are. Drives my wife crazy.
Well, I want to thank you, John, for joining us today. And I want to thank any viewers or people that are able to tune in. And thank you so much. And we will be back, and we hope to see you again soon.
Great. We have lots more to talk about. So catch us next podcast too.